The Imitation Nation podcast covers all things counterfeit, hosted by Shabbir and Sven of the Partnership for Safe Medicines and Sven Bergman of Venture Global. All statements are their own and not the opinions of their employers. Although I will say, Sven, our employers are keeping us very busy.
Yes, they are. Our employers, our clients, there's certainly a lot going on right now that requires a lot of thinking and advice. And as things shift, stuff gets busy. You're good?
I'm good. I'm headed to Washington next week. By the time anyone listens to this podcast, it'll be over, but I'm going to testify at the House Oversight Committee talking about counterfeit pharmaceuticals. I'm a big booster of the FDA, of our secure direct supply chain. So I'm going to talk about some of the problems we've seen and talk about the benefit of a good FDA, I think, good regulators, actually. It's not just the FDA, it's state boards of pharmacy, and law enforcement, and everyone else. Where you're I think, traveling also soon.
I am traveling also. I am flying to Cape Town, South Africa, where I'm going to an anti-illicit trade conference that's a lot focused on tax revenue protection, and kind of everything has to do with products that evade tax revenues. So a lot of security providers are always there, lots of government, law enforcement, and revenue authorities are always there. I'm on 2 panels. I give a presentation on illicit vapes, and I was put on one panel specifically because the gentleman and I who were on the panel, and I like him very, very much, but we categorically disagree with each other on some points. And they put us on purpose on a panel to say, let's have a healthy debate. I'm like, all right. So they literally created a on purpose kind of debate on it, which should be really, really fun.
So let me ask you a question before we get into the news. Obviously, all anybody can talk about this week is tariffs, because we got a lot of new tariffs. And I don't have an opinion on whether the tariffs are good or bad overall. And, I'm just sort of watching it happen, and I understand the rationale of the administration. But I'm actually curious, what do tariffs mean for a brand protection team? Like, if you're a brand protection team for, that's making, I don't know, Nikes or iPods, which nobody makes anymore, what would your reaction plan be to tariffs that are going to change the price of your product?
I think that's a very good point. It's actually something I posted on LinkedIn this morning, and it's something in the beginning of the year as tariffs came up. Same with you. I'm not an economist. I don't know what the strategy will work or doesn't work. I don't know that. But if you think about, counterfeit ultimately is created by a functionality of price, right? If something is expensive enough or has a large enough price umbrella that illicit goods are able to be sold cheaper for that with a reasonable quality, then that enables illicit trade. And the larger you make that price umbrella, so the more expensive the genuine good is, the more profitable and the more attractive it becomes for criminals to counterfeit, to smuggle, to divert. And so what I think for brand protection teams is important to know is that every brand protection team will have their, top 50 items that get counterfeited a lot. And that list needs to get revisited right now, because that top 50 list most likely just increased and is now a top 75 or top 100 list, because all of a sudden products where they might not counterfeited them before because it wasn't worthwhile it. But, if you're a brand like Nike, Under Armour, you name it, Lululemon, I don't care, Tech Electronics, doesn't really matter. And you had a product that used to be $200 and a counterfeiter might have not had a profit on it. Now the product with tariffs is $300. And so all of a sudden the counterfeiter is like, cool, I can actually now produce a counterfeit and make a profit, right? And just so take that math. And so my prediction is, and was in the beginning of the year, and we'll see now it's, now we're going from tabletop exercise to real life exercise. Will that really, really, really happen? And you and I have seen it before in real life, when during the pandemic, a bunch of prices artificially increased because of supply shortages, and just a bunch of price umbrellas got created because of that. A variety of counterfeit products increased on all kinds of goods. I see it. I give you one example very, very clearly, and we've talked about this on a previous podcast as well. China. I've done a lot of business in China, working for clients on brand protection. And whenever we go out to a fancy dinner, having a European wine in China is a really, really big deal. And the big deal is because the tariff is 50 to 75%, depending on vineyard. They're very specific on it. So the wine there is super expensive. And when the restaurant brings the bottle out, they make sure that you see the label and you can touch it and you can inspect the cork. And that's this massive thing, because a bottle of wine that's normally $100 is $200, $250, right? At a minimum over there. So it's always like a 2.5x. So the amount of counterfeit wine, European wines, American wines in China is massive, because that price umbrella exists. And so I think we're just going to see a ton of that, and brand protection teams really, really need to do some additional homework. And I can give more specifics if you want. There's like kind of top 6 recommendations I laid out this morning on LinkedIn of what I think they should do right now.
Cool. Well, we'll see. I mean, I feel like my crystal ball broke sometime around 2.5, 3 months ago, and I no longer know what's going to happen. So I just try and live in the moment.
No, yeah, I think for brand owners, and you're right, live in the moment. But for me, it's like be vigilant, and I'm always kind of the vigilant guy. I know you and I were yesterday on text, and I said sorry I was distracted, but I was, because I'm thinking all these things through. But as a brand owner, is first of all, cover the basics, record your trademarks if you already haven't, train customs, train law enforcement. Next step, audit your supply chains. A bunch of stuff will move around, vendors will move around. You might want to switch countries. Make sure your supply chain is tight. Educate retailers and consumers. Make it easy to report counterfeit. Often consumer tip lines are the best way to find counterfeit. And then most importantly, strengthen your investigative law enforcement litigation program. A well-protected brand and a well-defended brand is the best. The offense is often the best defense. And if criminals know that you will come after them with everything you have, including aggressive litigation, they're going to go to a weaker, less protected mark. So reach out to us if you want any help kind of thinking this through. But I think there will be a lot of activity, assuming these tariffs stay at these levels. My prediction is we will see a lot of activity in that general field. And as always, I hope I'm wrong, but that is what I expect. So speaking of counterfeit, we talked about last time. Want to talk about the crazy counterfeits of counterfeit U.S. postal stamps, which you and I keep getting haunted by?
Yeah. So for everybody who didn't hear the last show, I discovered that there's this problem with counterfeit forever stamps, and that it's actually kind of a big, open, and broadly committed crime. And I kind of couldn't believe it. And I started to look into it, and I saw some enforcement activity that really made me realize that people don't really appreciate it. It's probably because the fakes look so good that your letters still get through. So I went and I found a couple of companies that were advertising on Google their counterfeit stamps, and I bought them. I bought 5 sheets of 20, and I bought a roll of 100. These stamps should have cost over 40 cents a piece. They cost 25 cents a piece. I will tell you, by the way, Forever Stamps, introduced in 2007, never cost 25 cents a piece. They debuted at like 41. And I compared them to real stamps. They look pretty real. And I'm just sort of shocked now. One of the shipments came from a warehouse in the City of Industry in Los Angeles near the port of Laguna Beach, which you and I talked about was the subject of a giant smuggling ring. I'm sure the City of Industry is a large place full of warehouses, but it appears that at least 2 of them are used in criminal smuggling activity.
Wouldn't it be Cam from the folks that also did the containers? It's kind of like all connected, right?
I checked the address. It's not the same warehouse as the people who were illegally opening and resealing containers before CBP inspected them. I thought about that. I was like, I think I better check this address. Perhaps I stumbled upon yet another criminal revenue stream that they've created. The other came from a U-Haul storage place down in Santa Clara that I could drive to, but I don't know that I would learn anything. And I am not, in fact, a frontline investigator. I don't know what I would do. And while I doubt that violence would be committed upon me for counterfeit stamps, I have no desire to go poking my nose into somebody else's criminal ring.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's always an investigator's dream when you get an address and it's a U-Haul and you just know, you're like, all right, that's going to be an easy raid. So, well, how do stamps look? Do they look close to the genuine things you got?
Yeah, they look pretty close. But I'm going to take them. I mean, I'm not a stamp collector. A stamp collector might put them under a microscope or a magnifying glass and be able to tell. But I cannot tell. But I'm going to do 2 things. First of which is I'm going to send you a couple letters using these stamps and then with real stamps, and we'll see of the 4 which get through. I guess I'll send 1 real letter and 2 letters with the fake stamps. All really from me though, and we'll see if they get through or they get seized. And then the second thing I'm going to do is report this to the IPR Center, which is the Intellectual Property Rights Center, which is a big anti-counterfeiting cross-agency law enforcement group. And I've worked with some people there on counterfeit pharmaceutical issues before, and I'm super excited. I think they said they have somebody from U.S. Postal Service there, and I think that will be. I'll have done my duty, even if I don't have any illusions about being a part of $1 billion bust.
Yes. I've done the same in my conversations over the last couple of weeks. Whenever I was on the phone with CBP or ISDHS, any of them, I was like, hey, by the way, something I saw. And I think what always gets everybody, and for me, it not that counterfeiters do counterfeit things. That's what they do. That's their business. I get it. But that there are Google ads on it, right? So, and then what really killed me, one of these evenings, me just, scrolling through my TikTok, there were video ads for exactly those websites that you probably bought from on TikTok, where they talk that they are a wholesale closeout and, large discounts and buy now. And it's very user-friendly. It's very nicely and slickly done. I think I send you the video. If you can post it in the show notes too. But it's just incredible that they're able to advertise these counterfeit products. So let's see. I can't wait to get the letters. As I told you, somebody said that they might have a secret marking in it, and that hopefully the sorting machine kicks it out. And maybe it gets delivered to my house. Maybe it gets delivered to my house with a controlled delivery by the U.S. Postal Inspector Service, which I obviously would be super grateful to you for, because, then I have to boot break because I don't ask why I get mails with counterfeit stamp. Yeah, let's see. I'm excited to receive your mail. Please put a clarifying note in the letter of saying this is just a test.
I will. And I'll say, that I looked at those videos, those video ads on TikTok that you sent, and also the websites where I bought these. And I know that a lot of stuff that the Postal Service uses in their marketing is trademarked, but I couldn't actually find a TM on the forever stamp or on the materials associated with it. It's all copyrighted, right? Apparently all stamps made after 1971 are copyrighted by the Postal Service. But there is so much trademark infringement of the logo of the Postal Service going on from these counterfeiters.
Oh, yeah.
And I called a friend of mine who's a trademark expert who does trademark for the purpose of any counterfeiting, Jeffrey Potter at Patterson Belknap. And he's been he and his team have been personally responsible for busting tons of people, including people making counterfeit HIV medicine and putting it back in the supply chain using trademark law, right? Using civil actions when law enforcement hasn't acted yet. And the problem, of course, is that Jeffrey's a attack dog, but the Postal Service will never hire him. They would do it internally or through the DOJ. And I appreciate that all government law enforcement agencies have other priorities. But at some point, someone has to hold these folks responsible for basically making websites that look like the post office. Yes, selling me fake stamps.
Yes, I think there's two things. And yes, if these are international websites, they're hard to sometimes get a hold of, as you and I know. But here's the thing: if somebody ships it out of industry, come on, like that's an easy one for an agent to quickly drive over there and do that. That's a doable bust. And then for me, there's just low-hanging fruit is a nice, friendly letter from the U.S. Postal Inspector Service or the DOJ to Google and saying, hey, it'd be lovely if you don't accept money from counterfeiters for ads for counterfeit stamps, which, oh, by the way, carry a 25-year penalty on it. So, yes, I'm excited to see what the IPR Center report produces from you. So thank you for doing your civic duty.
You're welcome. Last time I had to do this was during the pandemic, and there were people selling empty vials of COVID vaccine on eBay. And I bought a couple so I could do a video about how I thought that was not safe. And one of my board members, who's former FBI, turned to me and said, and now you're going to file the complaint with the FBI about the potential criminal activity. And I was like, yes. And I'll tell you, filing the complaint took longer than ordering the stuff off eBay. It's like 3 times as long to file a complaint, to file a tip with the FBI than it took to actually buy the stuff on eBay. That's how good eBay's process is, one-click purchase.
Nice. Crazy.
So tell me what you found most relevant this week in the world of counterfeiting news.
Well, after in one of the last shows, we talked about counterfeit airbags, and I was like, how is that still a thing? Like, I remember it coming up. And so I, on one evening kind of went down the rabbit hole and started looking, and it's astonishing. There's so many cases out there, and not like little stuff, like the seizure we technically found of like a couple of hundred airbags. That was actually small. So there was, for example, a case out of New Baltimore, Michigan, filed in Lansing, and they have charged an individual with selling thousands of counterfeit airbags is being charged, can face, up to 7-year felony. And the craziest thing about that case was that and of course, Michigan has a auto fraud task force, as they have to have because it's Michigan, right? But so the Attorney General office said that they're estimating that there are 81,000 vehicles in Michigan alone, that are equipped with counterfeit restraint systems. So counterfeit airbags in 81,000 vehicles in Michigan, right? You take that times 50 states, that's a lot of counterfeit airbags. And then I found another case in Raleigh, same thing. Somebody got prosecuted for selling 2,500 counterfeit airbags into Raleigh across Facebook, all kinds of other platforms, all of these like discussion forums, etc. And so I was like, how can that still be? And then looked back at what probably sparked all this. And we talked about this last show, the Takata recall, right? Takata airbags had a manufacturing defect. And when they were deploying, they actually shot shrapnel in your face, right? Not the purpose of an airbag. So they all got recalled. And the size of that recall was massive. There was 67 million airbags that needed to be recalled. And right now, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration estimates that about, 88% of airbags have been replaced. So when you run the math on that, that's like 8 million airbags that didn't. And so, when you look at that, if the 8 million vehicles, and I told you an old vehicle of mine actually had one of those airbags, took me forever to get it replaced. At one point in time, you might get tired, the actual dealer doesn't have it, and somebody says, oh yeah, I can put an airbag in for you. Take 6 million vehicles, give it a 10% counterfeit rate. Yeah, you have 600,000 counterfeit airbags in the United States or something like that. So it's crazy how big this issue is for anybody that has a vehicle that is older and was impacted by the Takata recall, which, by the way, you can easily do on the National Highway Safety Transportation website. Type in your VIN, it'll tell you if your car is affected. And if your car has been replaced, but it was not replaced with an airbag by like a legitimate car dealer, like a Mercedes dealership, etc., Ford dealership, like Chevy, but you had it done by some random shop, take it to your actual dealership and have it verified that this is an authentic airbag. Because I think you should be found that a lot of these counterfeit airbags don't deploy. Like they're just in there and then it's not really an airbag.
No, it's just padding for ways it faces the steering. So my takeaway from this is that if you have a car that's been in an accident and the airbag's deployed, you should, and it wasn't replaced by the dealer, you should be making an appointment with the dealer right now.
Correct.
Or
you did want to wait for a recall and went to the guy versus waiting for the dealership, you might want to get it checked.
Yeah. And if you bought a used car and you haven't yet checked it, check to see, the Carfax, so to speak. If it wasn't an accident, and if it's an accident, you should take it to the dealer to have them check the airbags, because this is you only get one shot. This is like when I complain about people selling counterfeit cancer meds. It's like a lot of people don't get a do-over if they have a whole course of treatment with a counterfeit cancer med because the cancer has gotten uncontrollable. So you often in life, you sometimes only get one shot at something, and you definitely want that airbag to deploy when it's supposed to.
Agreed. One of the reasons why I would never do anything like, parachute jumping or like paragliding, because I'm like, that's one shot. That's not how I gamble.
Done that.
And And more power to you, Shabbir. Just
My stepmother angrily signed the waiver when I put it in front of her for my skydive, my one and only lifetime skydive. She was like, okay, I don't care, whatever you want.
There's no reason to jump out of a perfectly fine airplane. If I'm jumping out of an airplane, it's on fire. And then one more thing, by the way, on all these car parts. So as I said, I went down the rabbit hole. The stuff I found, it's crazy. All kinds of fake car parts. Fake license plates. The state of New York had an issue of people shipping fake license plates because the state of New York is pretty finicky on their vanity plates. And so people just order fake vanity plates, fake New York plates. So that's apparently an issue. And then there was a nice large seizure recently of fake license plate stickers. So like the inspection stickers or the stickers that say you have the car registered, ton of those being counterfeit as well. So I just find it interesting. For me, it brings it nicely full circle with the stamps. Stickers are easy to counterfeit. So don't do that. And, especially with the automotive, bring it full circle to the beginning of this show. Automotive parts might be the hardest hit by all these tariffs. And all of a sudden, if a brake pad by Brembo or whatever that comes from Europe or Pirelli tires all of a sudden are $2,000 versus a $1,000 tire, yeah, you'll see counterfeiters saying, "Oh no, that's a Pirelli tire." No, it's not. And so it'll be interesting how that entire counterfeit car part universe will expand. So we'll see.
So our parting advice for everybody is to turn your spidey senses up to 10. As the tariffs, we're going to see a lot of people probably looking for new financial opportunities that were created by the tariffs to do counterfeiting. And so your normal cautious behavior should be on double extra secret alert.
I like that. Spidey senses up to 10. Well, Shabbir, why don't you read us out?
The Imitation Nation podcast is a production of Cause Stories and is the sole owner of this production. Podcast production by Shabbir and Sven. Podcast management by Sarah Imber Safdar. Theme music written by Jonathan Boyle.